Hello everyone, I'm Jack. Welcome to your first demo for Intro to Backend Development. Today we're going to be building a simple to-do list server and going over at the same time some of the basics of uh, how backend works. So this code is not going to be posted anywhere later, so if you would like it or if you think it will be valuable to you, I encourage you to program along with me. We're going to have a great time today. So first off, you should all already have Python installed, some version of 3. We can see I have Python 3.9 installed. Older versions should also work as well, as long as it's Python 3 decently recent. This may, on your computer, you may need to access this by typing Python 3 instead of Python. As long as you can get some version of 3 somehow, that should be good. I'm going to type Python. You should use whatever command gets you your Python 3 in place of Python. So currently, I'm in this starter code directory. This contains the same things that the starter code we're going to give you for your first assignment does, although yours will be in an src directory, which is a little better convention, but this is how my file system happens to be laid out today. So we can see I can look at my requirements.txt. There's a lot of stuff there. Most of it not worth worrying about. The only thing we're going to directly interact with from this list is Flask, because that is the actual server library underpinning all of this. As a quick side note, this is console with a K running the fish shell, and I have replaced my cat with something fancier that does line numbers. None of this is particularly important. You can use whatever shell and terminal you want. On Mac, the default is terminal, and on Windows, I recommend PowerShell. That's my personal preference. The CMD will work fine as well. Or if you happen to be running the Windows subsystem for Linux, more power to you. I love it. Linux is great. Anyway, if you're curious more about my setup, because there are going to be a couple different command line tools I use that may look a bit different and function a bit differently than you're used to or familiar with, please come to my office hours. I will be more than happy to talk about dev setup forever. I have a lot of things to say. So anyway, we recommend that you use Visual Studio Code to edit. It's not a requirement. You can edit your code however you want. If you are using Visual Studio Code, you can simply open it with code dot to open it in the current directory. I've already got that open, so I'm just going to switch over to that. So I'm here in Visual Studio Code. You can see the same two files. Now let's take a look at app.py. As another side note, if you think that the font sizes I'm using are too small in this lecture, please, you can comment below this video or just send me a message in Slack, and I'll adjust for the future. So what we have here is just a basic server setup. How do we run it? So to avoid switching back and forth between windows all the time, I'm going to use my built-in terminal in Visual Studio Code. I get this by pressing Control tilde to toggle it. That might be different on different operating systems. On Windows, it should be the same. On Mac, I'm really not sure. But you can find out what it is by going to your View menu, which you guys can't see on my screen. But if you go to your View menu, there is a terminal option, which should have the shortcut next to it. So let's get set up. The first thing to know is that Python installs all of its dependencies globally. This is kind of problematic because of version conflicts and all kinds of other things. So what we can do to circumvent that is create a local Python installation called a virtual environment in which to install our dependencies. There are a lot of ways to do this with a couple different tools, and it's very confusing. My preferred method is to type python-m vnv VNV. You can already see it auto-completing in my terminal. So what this is going to do is it's going to call the VNV program or module built into Python, and then the parameter VNV is telling it to put it at the path where we currently are /VNV. So if I run that, we'll see that a VNV directory has been added in my sidebar here. And that has a lot of things in it. Most importantly are these activate scripts. There should be one for your particular shell, probably based on operating system. If you're in Bash, you're going to end up running activate. I'm in Fish, so I'm going to run activate.fish. PowerShell will be activate.ps1. I believe that you'll have, if you are on a system that's capable of running the CMD, the Windows CMD, you'll have a .bat file. And so what I'm going to do is just source vnv bin activate.fish. And that's going to run that file and set everything appropriately so that I'm within my virtual environment. We can see now vnv has been added to the beginning of my already very long command prompt. So now any Python command you execute, regardless of whether you change directories, is going to be in that environment, using that environment. To stop that, you can simply deactivate and then reactivate the same way as you activate in the first place. So now we're going to install our dependencies now that we have this. Actually, first, just to go into a bit more detail, we can see in here also these are linked binaries to relevant Python tools from your system, and all of your installations are going to go in this folder, pretending that this folder is the main Python installation. Anyway, so let's install those dependencies. I'm going to use pip install -r requirements.txt. So what that's going to do is it's going to read out the requirements from requirements.txt and their versions. It's going to install all of these packages. Depending on your installation, you may have to use pip3 or even python-m pip. If you can't figure out which one to use, please message us in Slack. This should work for most people, though. If you haven't picked up on it yet, I'm very critical of Python. That's going to be a common theme for this course. So now I've installed all my packages. Can I run the code? This looks like a functional server. We can see a root declared and this app.run down here. So I think we're ready to run it. I'm going to do that simply by typing python app.py. That's going to start up this server. We can see here the server appears to be running. It says running on 0.0.0.0:5000. So that's an address and a port. We can quit with Control-C. A little note about 0.0.0.0. So you can hypothetically visit 0.0.0.0. A lot of people do test their servers by clicking follow link, and you can visit it. I'm going to switch over to Firefox, and I can paste in 0.0.0.0:5000, and I'll get back in my browser just the text hello world, which we may remember from code is what's returned from app.root/ the base path. Now, I don't usually visit 0.0.0.0. I like to use something like localhost, usually. Or that little flash was of something else I used to be running there that was cached. Or 127.0.0.1. Both of those work. The reason for this is that on some systems, 0.0.0.0 does not redirect you to localhost. I've had some people that I've worked with experience this problem because 0.0.0.0 isn't exactly the same thing as localhost. It's probably going to work. You're welcome to visit it, but I think it's just something valuable to be aware of that it might not. You might not be able to visit 0.0.0.0. So, website runs. Wow, cool. We've our server's running. We can visit it and get back hello world. Okay, so let's look over this code in a little more detail. We can see that we import Flask, our framework, and create an app using the file name, or the process name, really. We can see that we have one root declared at slash on our server, where we were returning hello world from. And we can change this text freely however we'd like. We could say hi world, question mark. And now we can see that the server has automatically restarted. And if we switch over to our browser, we can reload the page and see that our text update is also reflected there. So we can see down here, we run the app at 0.0.0.0, which is a very special address that basically tells your computer to host the server at all available IP addresses, meaning that not only is this accessible via localhost, but this may be accessible on your local network via your computer's IP address. We specify the port 5000, which translated into the port we put into our browser up here. And we turn on debug mode, which provides some different things in the console. Nothing super important. For a production server, you want to turn it off, but it's sort of just nice to have on now. So I said we were going to build a to-do app. Let's build a to-do app. So first off, there's a couple packages we're going to have to import. Let's import the built-in Python package JSON, as well as let's import the request module from Flask. These two things are going to be useful later for retrieving things that people have sent to us and for parsing that into a usable, useful format. So you may have noticed there was just a quick cut there because I had some issues with autosave on my editor, messing with my my auto restarting. It was saving with invalid syntax, just crashing my server repeatedly. That's now been fixed. We're going to move on and pretend it didn't happen. So to save our tasks, we don't really have any fancy methods of data storage yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a global variable called tasks, which is simply going to be a dictionary of tasks. So we're going to map numeric IDs for our tasks to tasks. So what do I have to do today? So in each task, we're going to have an ID. This one is 0. We're going to have a description. This one is, I need to fold my laundry. It's in a big old pile. Cleaned it, just haven't folded it. And this is, as I mentioned, not done. We'll add a second task as well, let's say. The task 1 is going to be ID 1. Task 1 is a description is going to be homework, because I haven't done any of that recently either. And as I just mentioned, I haven't done my homework. So that is how we're going to store our data, just in this, by mutating this. And now we are also going to keep track of what ID we're up to by setting task ID counter equal to 2. So now we know where to put our next task, and we know what tasks we have. So let's show those to the user. So we don't really need this hello world thing anymore. Let's call it instead get tasks. And what we are going to do is set this result equal to a dictionary where success equals true and data equals a list of the values of tasks. So what this allows us to do is basically, the reason we're doing this, the reason this is sort of the convention for the class, is so that clients can very easily check if anything went wrong just by checking the success variable in the response. And if it's true, then they know that this data is going to be valid. Here, the data is very easy, not really anything that needs to be done. So we're going to return json.dumps res and 200. Now 200 is an okay, everything's fine status code, and we're using Python's multiple return feature here. So we're going to return that this was a-okay, and also use the JSON package imported above to turn this dictionary into the text-based JSON format that can be easily sent back and parsed, and the client can do whatever they want with that. Let's save and restart the server. And we're running. So, oh, I'm also going to do one more thing over here. I'm going to say that I'm going to app.root this to /tasks/. So now we can see in the browser that going back to localhost 5000 leads us to success true and a list of our tasks. And we get the same thing at /tasks. Very cool. Let's do something a little more interesting, shall we? So let's create it. Let's give our clients the ability to create a task. So for creation, we're going to use a post request. So we can add this little annotation here, say app.root /tasks again, and we'll say method. The methods that will allow, that's inside of the quotation marks. We'll say that methods we will allow this endpoint are post. Now we can have two endpoints with the same string path, provided that they have different methods. So this is the default of get, and get tasks will handle that. However, this is post, so we'll create a new method, create tasks, create task, which will handle that. At this point, because Python's scope is utterly bizarre, we are going to want to use this task ID counter. So we're going to say global task ID counter. As you should know from your previous Python experience, I hope. So what we're going to do then is we want to get the post body of our request. We want to get the data that people have sent to us. So we're going to say that our body is json.loads request.data. So request.data comes from that requests module earlier. So we can get what they've sent us, and that what they sent us though is a string. It's JSON encoded. So we use json.loads to turn that into a dictionary in body. Now we can say that we want to get a couple things out of this. Well, actually, on just one thing. We want to get out the description of the task. Now that is going to be body dot get description. Oops, that's a quote. That's a string. That's going to be body dot get description. Now this could also be, as this is a dictionary, this could be body description. However, I prefer .get description because it does not error. Instead, it returns null, or it returns none if there is no key description. And you have the option of specifying a default value. So we could make our specified default value no description. And now, if nothing is found for description, it's going to be no description, which isn't particularly helpful to our users, but you know, it's something. It doesn't crash the server. I think they'll appreciate that at least. So we'll create our new task with the ID. The ID is going to be task ID counter. The description is going to be description. And by default, this is going to be not done. So now we'll say that tasks task ID counter is equal to this new task. We'll increment our task ID counter, which is because we are reassigning it. That's why we needed to declare it global. And then we will return JSON.dumps task. Oh, well, we're going to return JSON.dumps success true data task and 201. Now 201 is a different status code that sort of signifies an object created. I don't have all of these memorized. It's not particularly important. It's still all good, but you can check out httpstatuses.com for what is, in my opinion, a really nice guide to what different status codes mean. I don't believe in this class we're going to be grading particularly on status code clarity. There's going to be a couple you're going to have to use, but should all be good in general. So now this endpoint, hypothetically, creates a task for us, but how can we test that? We can't exactly just go back into Firefox and make a post request. So this is where this other tool that you should install called Postman comes in. So let me just switch over to my Postman here, and we can see that if I press this little plus button, it creates a new untitled request. So I want to make my request to localhost 5,000 5,000/tasks. By default, this is just a GET request, and so I can simply click send, and it will give us back the same data that Firefox was giving us when we visited this URL. However, if I can change it to a post request, now I can send it and get big errors because we've sent no request body, but we tried to decode a request body. So let's send a request body. In order to do that, we're going to go raw. We're going to set this to JSON for nice formatting. And now in here we can type a we can type out a request. So let's say description. And my description will be record first demo, which is currently in progress. So I am going to send that, and we can see that it returns to us this new task with ID2, description record first demo. So I'll open up another Postman tab here and put in localhost 5,000 tasks again and get. And we can see now that our list returned here. And I can change this to JSON for nice formatting. Our list returned here contains the first two tasks plus our latest task. We can test this again. We can see I've made a lot of mistakes, so I also want to edit first demo. So I will send that. We see that has ID 3, and if we get again, we can see that we now have all 4 tasks, 0 through 3. I really need to get these done. So that's very cool. We got it working. So now I want to add a feature that's going to demonstrate some other URL, some other path features. So I want to add a feature to get a specific task. And what we're going to do to get that specific task is say app.root /tasks/ and then in angle brackets here, we're going to say int : task ID. That is not a colon. Close though. What this is going to do is this is going to let us put a number in our URL, right into the path, and we'll have access to that number from our code. So let's def get task, and that takes task ID, which comes from right up here in this annotation. So we can say the task that we're looking for is going to be tasks.get task ID. And by default, if you don't specify a default value for get, that's going to be none. So we can simply check if not task. Then we will return json.dumps our success in this response is going to be false. And then we will include with it an error field, which is going to be task not found. Just a little bit of information for the user. And I've misplaced this bracket. So we will also include a 404 not found response code as our response code. However, in the success case, we will simply return, we can copy right from up here, we'll return json.dumps success true data task and 200. So we can test that as well. We will say localhost 5,000 tasks. Oops. Host 5,000 tasks slash I want to get the third task, which is record this video. And we can send that and realize that we haven't saved our code, so it hasn't restarted. And now we can send that and realize that when we restarted, because we are storing our data non-persistently as a global variable, task 3 was deleted. If we check what our tasks are now, we can see that we're back to just tasks 0 and 1. So if I get task 1, task 0. All right, let me switch back to the code for a sec. I put this in as task when it should have been, when I meant to put in tasks. So that means that over in Postman, when I was visiting tasks/0, it was visiting task/0. We can see here that getting task 0 from tasks with an s/0 works properly, getting task 1 works properly, and getting task 2 provides us with a 404 not found, telling us that the task was not found. That all looks good. So, home stretch, I promise. We're almost there. So there's a couple other things that we'd like to be able to do. I would like to be able to update a task. So for this, I will say again that I want to say tasks. I want to say task slash some ID, but this time methods post. So I'll write an update tasks method that takes task ID. And that is going to do very similar things. We can copy the beginning of this because we want to look and see if a task is found. If it's not, bummer. I guess we will return a 404. Otherwise, I do want to parse out the body from json.loads request.data. So now I'm going to want to change my task. I'm going to want to say task description equals body.get description, or let's default to no updated, no updated description, and task done is equal to body.get done. And let's just do a default value of false because things are probably not done if they're not specified. Actually, I'd rather do this slightly differently, which is a little off script, but I'd rather say, I'd rather let description equal this, and let's go ahead and let that default to none, and say if description, then I'd like to say task description equals description. And then we will set done to whether or not they've specified done, and we can then do the same thing as we did up here and return that we've been successful. So, boy, I have caused a problem. Why is that? Oh, I forgot my array brackets on there. Let's restart the server. Let's go run to test again. You're probably getting used to this rhythm. So coming over to Postman, we can see that my current tasks are to fold my laundry and to do my homework. Let's update task 0, which is to fold my laundry. So we'll make a post request to that task. We will set our body to JSON and say that actually I was wrong. The pile of laundry I thought I had to fold is actually laundry I have to do. So I'll set my description to do laundry. We can send that, and now we see we've returned do laundry, which is false, and checking our tasks again, we see that now we've changed to do laundry and ID 0. And now let's just pretend, just pretend. Let me dream that I've done my laundry. So it's actually true. I've done my laundry. And so I can send that. We see that now do laundry is true down here. And over here, do laundry is now done. So coming back over to the code for the final feature here, we're going to add one last feature for a user who now wants to cover up the evidence of their mistake. I really wish that the fact that I needed to do my laundry was not something someone could find out by visiting this server. So I'd like to be able to delete a task. So this is actually going to be at the same path yet again. However, this time we're going to make the only method we accept in this method delete. So we're going to write delete tasks. Task ID. All right, here we go. So we're going to say the task we want to delete is tasks.get task ID. And now if the task ID isn't there, of course, we're going to then task will be none, so we can check if not task. Then we can simply go up and grab once again our task not found 404 response. Otherwise, we will del tasks task ID. We will then we will out of courtesy return the task so that our users can take one last look at it or confirm that they actually deleted the right thing, whatever they prefer, and say that in fact we've a complete success. All the evidence that you ever hadn't done your laundry is gone. Let's hop back over to Postman real quickly, and we can now see in tasks that we've reverted back to our default starting tasks, fold laundry, and homework. I've decided actually I'd like to ignore my homework, so I'd rather just delete that task. So that's task. We can verify over here in our get that is task 1. Great. So I'll copy this path right over into a new Postman tab. I would prefer to keep a different Postman tab for each type of request instead of just, I could, of course, just switch the drop down here. But instead, I will create this delete request, send. There we go. This has been returned to us. And checking our overall tasks list, We no longer have to do our homework. Good work, team. This is definitely how it works. I completely condone and endorse not doing your homework. We made it. We've built a little, uh, nice little to-do list app. Uh, Now, someone else that likes building front ends, I don't personally, can come along and build it, make it look nice for our users. But that was pretty cool. It all works. I hope that you all followed along and enjoyed. I have to go try and edit this 51-minute mess down into something watchable. So, anyway, hope you enjoyed. Please Slack me, comment, whatever. Contact me however you see fit. I guess Slack is probably preferable about any questions, and I will see you next week.